I'm Calloway, Applications Engineer at Man Machine. In this video I'm going to demonstrate Solibri Office. The first screen that you can see is the File tab, with the main menu down the left hand side. The first option allows us to open models that we have saved on our computer. Solibri can open up two file types. You can open up IFC and SMC files. SMC being the native file format for Solibri. We also have access to the most recent open models, which we can see displayed here. We also have the option to pin any files to the top of the list for quick and easy access. We also have access to the Solution Center, where we can download extensions and plugins assigned to your account. We also have access to all our settings, and we can access help and support. For this demonstration, I'm going to use the Solibri Building IFC file. Once opened, Solibri automatically takes us to the Model tab, which is the next option on the menu bar at the top. When we open up a file, Solibri will guess the discipline of the model based on certain settings. In this example, it's correctly taken this as an architectural model. So I'm just going to click OK to that. On the right hand side of the screen, we have our main 3D model, which we can interact with. On the left hand side at the top, we have our section here for the model tree. Any projects we have loaded into Solibri will be listed here. We can load in multiple projects and federate models. The model tree is expandable. As you can see here, we can access different elements within the project through the file tree system. There are three different options available to us to change how the elements are arranged. By selecting an object within the model tree, the information associated with that element is available at the bottom in the info panel. The tabs, which are in a black font, are associated with Solibri properties, and in the half-tone blue we can see the properties associated with that element from the application that the IFC has been exported from. At the top of the window we have a menu bar available to us. The first option gives us our navigational tools. We have pan, spin, walk and game navigation. Each has a shortcut assigned to it. Using the keypad on my keyboard, pressing 1, 2 or 3 or 4 will go into the relevant mode. In pan mode we can pan around the model in the 3D viewer. Spin allows us to rotate the model. By clicking on a point, Solibri will rotate around it. We can go into walk mode. By using the mouse, we can change direction, move forwards and backwards. Last but not least is game mode, where the mouse controls your view and you use WASD on your keyboard to move backwards or forwards. Next on the menu, we have our different modes. With info selected, clicking on any element within the project will select it and display its properties. When in select mode, selecting any object will add that object to our selection basket. To turn on the selection basket, we go to Views in the top right hand corner and click on our selection basket. We can see there the window that I have selected is inside the selection basket. Holding down Control, I can select multiple elements and they will add into the selection basket. We can then use the selection basket later on. Next, we can hide elements. We can access markup tools. We can add dimensions onto the project. We can add sections. And we can make elements transparent. Next, we can reset our 3D viewer back to its original view. We can turn on and off certain types of elements, such as walls, doors, windows, so on and so forth. We can also arrange the 3D viewer into predefined views. We can also change the project between perspective and orthogonal. We can also turn a minimap on. And we can also turn a footprint on, which we can control. Next, we have the Checking tab. Again, we have a 3D viewer on the right hand side, and we have the information window at the bottom, and we have 3 new windows. We have a checking window, a results summary, and a results window. The checking window contains our rule sets. These are groups of rules which we can run against the model. For example, here we have a rule set called Bin Validation Architectural. Inside there we have 4 categories. Inside those categories we have the rules themselves. And before I start explaining anything else about this checking window, I'm going to go to the Check Model button and I'm going to tell Solibri to run the rule sets. As you can see, Solibri is very fast at running through the rules. It's a multi-threaded application which means that we can start going through the results whilst it's still running rules, just in case we have a lot of rule sets open or we have some rules that take some time. Towards the right hand side of this window we have the results for the rules. On the left hand side we have what we've classed as critical severity, moderate severity, low severity, rejected and accepted results. Should we run a rule and it passes, we'll get a little OK in the accepted results box. If there's any issues, we'll see an icon on one of the failed columns. We can see here that under components checks we've got a number of issues. We have a rule set here that's going to check that wall dimensions should be of sensible dimensions, and in there we can see check for height, length and opening distances. These have issues associated with them. For example, if I select the wall's height, you'll see that the results window down here updates to show the results for that particular rule. We can see here on the ground floor we have an issue with height value on a wall. Looking at our model, we can investigate what this issue is and whether it's a false positive. Resetting the view and adding a section box, we can see that this particular piece of wall is used for two-tier ceiling. Selecting the element, we can see that they've used plasterboard for the drop. We can filter the results by clicking on the icon at the top of the column. We can remove any issues that are not of the severity that we're interested in. What we're going to want to do with these results is to mark them as accepted or raise them as an issue. Going back to the issue of the wall height, I can right click on the result. I can mark this as accepted, as in this case it's a false positive. I could mark it as rejected if there was a problem there. But for now I'm going to override the results and mark that as accepted. In this rule we can see here that the wall length is below a specified amount. Again, this is a false positive and I'm going to mark that as accepted. Looking at the rule set for clearance in front of windows, we can see there's a number of issues where there's columns directly in front of a window. What we can do is we can right click on the rule and we can take a look at its properties. We can see what the rule is doing here. Solibri is looking for a component, in this case anything that's a window, and within a specified area, either on one side or either side. If certain elements fall within that space, it will flag it up as a fault. We can add exceptions to the rule, such as furniture, which Solibri will ignore. In this case, it is an issue, and I'm going to want to add this to my report. For now, I'm just going to click the Add Slide button. We're going to get the Issues Detail window, but I'm not going to concern myself with that at this time, and I'm just going to close that, and Solibri is going to automatically save that. I can look at other issues, add that to my report, and close the issue detail window. Once I've gone through my results and I'm happy with marking them up, I can go to the Communications tab. On the Communications tab, again on the right hand side, we have our 3D viewer. And on the left hand side, we have our presentations window where we can create a new presentation from our results. And inside that presentation, down here, we can have our list of issues. And from when we created the slides earlier, selecting any issues will give us the issues details, which we need to complete. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to create a new presentation. We can choose to import issues from a BCF file, from a BCF server, from an Excel file, from an information takeoff results, or from our check-in results. I'm going to select from check-in results and click OK. The 4 issues that we created slides for earlier are now listed on the Issues tab, and we can look at those issues. As mentioned, we've got the Issues Detail panel here, where we can add information about that issue. We can add a title, which is automatically filled out by the rule title. We can add a description, and depending on the rule that's generated this issue, we have an automatic description generator. Sometimes we'll get a basic amount of information, other times it'll give us some of the working outs. We can then choose the status. Add a stage and date due for the issue. We can also add who's responsible. In this case it could be the architect. Or I could add a custom person to the list. Below that we have our Communications tab. Solibri will automatically generate a screenshot at the creation of the slide. However, should we want to add our own detailed images to the issue, we can look at that in the 3D viewer and add that to the issue. We also have access to our markup tools, so if we need to add any further information onto the image, we can do. You can also add notes. And once I've gone through all my issues and filled out the information, we can export the issues out. Going back to the presentation window, clicking on the reports button, we have a few options available to us. We can export to a BCF file. We can generate a report as a PDF or an Excel document. Also, if you set up the BCF plugin for Solibri, if you're using something such as BIMtrack to communicate issues between Solibri and Revit, for example, we'll have that option as well to synchronize. For now though, I'm going to select Excel, click Save Report, and save that. Next, we have the information takeoff. Again, on the right hand side, we have our 3D viewer. We have access to the model tree. We have a new window for classifications. We have access to the selection basket, which I mentioned previously, the information window, and an information takeoff window. First of all, looking at classification, Solibri has a general idea of what elements are, such as walls, doors, windows, but it may be necessary to break those down further, such as internal doors, internal windows, etc., etc. Looking at a pre-existing classification for building elements, we'll go into the settings and we'll take a look at how it's set up. On the first tab, settings, we can choose the components for Solibri to look at. We can add any inclusions and any elements to be excluded. We can then choose the different classifications we're going to want to create and assign a colour. On the next tab, we start creating our rules. We tell Solibri the type of component to look for example a door, and then looking at certain properties, we can have Solibri find components with those properties. For example, any doors which has a layer property which starts with exter followed by anything else. Should it tick that box, it's going to class that as an external door. Also, for any doors which have a property pset common is external with a property of true, will also be classed as an external door. And then any remaining doors within the project will be classed as interior doors. The next two tabs are going to show us any components which match the component filter but haven't yet been assigned to a classification based on our rules. And the last tab will show us all the components which have been assigned classifications based on our rules. On the classification window, we can expand that, and using classifications we created earlier, we can find any components which match those rules. As mentioned, we have access to the information takeoff. Again, we're going to take a look at building elements. For our building elements, quantities, information takeoff, again, we have a filter for Solibri to choose which elements to include or exclude. Then once Solibri knows which elements to include, we can add properties in the form of columns, and Solibri will find those elements and display them down here. For example, if I do a take off all now for building elements, Solibri is going to find any elements that match the filter and it's going to list them here. To show you a second example, spaces, and we can do an information takeoff for spaces. To customize the properties displayed, I can right click on a column, I can remove existing columns, and I can add new columns choosing which properties to display. To export my information takeoff, again I go to the reports button, choose whether to export based on a template or without template, and hit the save button.